Hello and welcome to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed, the podcast where you get quick, practical information about a hot topic. In the time it takes to make a cup of coffee, you'll gain insights on hot topics and pressing HR issues. I'm your host, Rebecca Jacobs, and we are so glad you're here. Before we start, here's my usual disclaimer that the podcast is general information only and does not contain any legal advice. Now it's time to dive in. Well, for today's podcast, I'm very excited to say that I have a guest, and that is Jami Kastner from MRA. And Jami, would you please take a moment just to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Rebecca. I am the manager of our reference and background investigation department here at MRA, and I've been working in the reference and background investigation department for almost 25 years. So I have a lot of sort of boots on the ground experience behind the manager piece.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time today. So we're talking about something really fun today, which is social media. And I was doing some research and I saw that there was a CareerBuilder survey from 2017. I couldn't find a more recent one, but even then, it's a great figure. According to the CareerBuilder survey, 70% of employers use social media to screen candidates before hiring, which was up significantly from 60% in 2016. Digging into more of those numbers, looks like the things that they're looking for, 61% said they're looking for information that supports the person's qualifications for the job. 50% said that they were looking to see if the person has an online persona. 37% are looking for what other people are posting about the candidate, which is something I had never even thought about looking for. And then 24% were looking for any reason at all not to hire a candidate. So what are your thoughts from a reference and background check stance? What's your perspective and thoughts on what employers are looking for?
And so all those things are obviously valid because it's what they're actually looking for. But from a background checking standpoint, some things that I'm a little more concerned with, or I would want them to find out, would be some of the problematic behaviors that we can see in social media, things that are racist or sexist, discriminatory posts. Also, sexually explicit material can be something that they'd want to know about. Threats or acts of violence, I would think they really need to have those kinds of posts flagged and make themselves aware of that. And then also anything that's potentially illegal would also kind of pop to it. So I get what they're going for, but also from a background checking standpoint, I think social media searches add all of this to the background check.
Yeah, so as a employment law attorney, it gives me a little bit of concern to think about someone going onto social media and searching up a candidate, because think about all of the things we're not allowed to ask in an interview. We can't say, or on an application, what race are you? Do you have a disability? What religion do you adhere to? How old are you? But if I go onto someone's Instagram or Facebook or something like that, I'm potentially going to see a lot of information about them. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I could see someone, going into their house of worship. I could see someone in a wheelchair. And that information scares me as an employment law attorney, because I think, if there's some evidence, through a deposition or through, notes in the personnel file or in a document about looking at the candidate, if there's some indication that person found out that information through social media and then that person wasn't hired, that would be a piece of evidence that could be used against the company in a discrimination case. Do you agree with that concern?
That is probably the biggest concern, is seeing things you really just don't want to see.
We don't want companies to inadvertently discover information they're not allowed to see. But we also see that there's some value in information that can be gotten from social media. So kind of driving to the point here is, let's think about what are the different options that an employer could do to try and still get some information. So the most risky, kind of looking at most risky to least risky, the most risky thing to do is to tell that manager, yeah, you can go ahead and you can keep doing your searches and getting that information. I would be very hesitant to encourage that. A little less risky is where we designate someone in the organization, perhaps someone in HR who's not a decision maker, who would be the one to go into social media, but they would just report, like I would have envisioned just like an email, just with text, no pictures, that just would say, this person had some inflammatory or some threatening language or some indication of violence or something like that, but it wouldn't include any of their protected characteristics. What other options can you think of, Jami?
Well, the one that I personally feel best balances the risk to the benefit of it is finding a third party that is Fair Credit Reporting Act certified to do your social media searches for you. When you find this third party, they're going to block out any protected class information. You're not even going to see that. You're not going to see regular old posts. You're only going to see posts that are in one of these dangerous categories that we pointed out, threats of violence. You're going to see illegal activity, but you're not going to see that they just had a baby or just became a grandma. And so those things will be all filtered out for you. And you would only see the information that you can consider. So I think that's probably the best balance. I would also say there's another option, which is probably the least risk ever, but don't use social media. But I think that's the least risk of getting sued, right? It's not the least risk in the concept of then you don't know at all what they're doing on their social media. And I think social media can add an important facet to a person's background. It just should be viewed correctly.
Well, thank you for your time, Jami. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed. For this episode, be sure to reference the show notes where you can sign up to connect for more podcast updates. If you have questions, you can connect with MRA's hotline team by emailing infonow@mranet.org or calling 866-474-6854. Check out other MRA episodes on your favorite podcast platform, such as MRA's 30-Minute Thrive. And as always, make sure to follow so you don't miss out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll have another hot HR topic in 2 weeks.